Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to look back on the heatwave of 2003. It's now 20 years to the month since we saw that historic heatwave where we did break the all-time temperature record at the time. It broke the all-time August temperature record, and in fact it still holds the all-time August temperature record with 38.5 degrees on the 10th of August 2003 in Faversham, Kent. You see I highlighted it here. Of course, we've eclipsed 40 degrees now, 40.3 degrees in July 2022, last summer in Coningsby, Lincolnshire, but this is still the temperature record recorded all the way back in 2003. From all the heat waves we've had in the last few years, with all the very hot spells, it's very interesting to see that we haven't broken that temperature that we recorded 20 years ago. And it is actually very interesting looking at these daily max temperature records. A lot of them set decades ago, just showing you that although yes, the climate is warming, and that yes, we are seeing a lot of temperature records broken recently, including the all-time temperature record and the July temperature record. A lot of these records, especially the autumn records, go back to the 40s and 50s here. Now, the event back in 2003 is not like a sort of a plume event that we have seen quite frequently the last few years. This was a proper heat wave. This is a traditional 7-day heat wave plus for many areas. We saw high pressure building with very hot air. We'll have a look at some of the reanalysis charts in a minute. And it did produce just heat building day on day. And eventually, in the southeast corner, we got up to that 38.5 degrees. Now, it wasn't insanely hot everywhere. It was heat wave levels in most locations. But we'll be able to see that it really was pinpointed in that southeast east corner where we did see the 20-degree isotherm push in on the 10th, where we did see those peak temperatures. Now, if you look at the reanalysis charts, if we do start back on around the 5th, this is where the high pressure starts to build in, the 4th and the 5th. You can see the high pressure starts building off Europe, and you can see that eventually it does move the winds up to a southerly direction, and by around the 5th, 6th of August, we're seeing temperatures into the 30s in the southeast. Nothing ridiculous yet, hot, but and heat wave levels, but nothing ridiculous. But as we progress, that southerly wind just stays, and we see a really stationary weather pattern. The air across the high pressure across Europe doesn't move. The low pressure in the Atlantic doesn't move, and basically spins on its own axis for a number of days. And eventually, as we head towards the 10th, this is where the low pressure tries to break in, and it brings one last push of southerly winds, and eventually we see that insanely hot air move in for eventually breaking down in the following days. If we actually do have a look at the days beyond that, you'll be able to see that eventually we see low pressure develop to our north, and that will move that hot air away. Again, if we look at the upper air temperatures, we go back to sort of the 4th. You can see the hot air arriving, the 15-degree isotherm getting in on the 4th, and eventually we do see hints of the 20-degree isotherm. But of course, the 20-degree isotherm can't actually sustain itself over the UK. We are simply too far north. So whenever we see the 20-degree isotherm, we are, of course, requiring a strong southerly wind. But of course, it goes a bit more slack here, and you can see the 20-degree isotherm just basically flirts with our south coast, with us dominating in the 15-degree isotherm. All areas are warm, but it really is quite a strong temperature gradient with the hottest conditions in the southeast. As we progress towards the 9th and the 10th, we see the air mass hardly changes, and it doesn't really change location either. But as we progress towards the 10th, we see one last push of hot air, and you can see that 20-degree isotherm just about nudges into the south coast for Sunday the 10th, and into the southeast through the evening of the 10th for getting shoved away by around the 12th, 13th, with much fresher Atlantic air moving in. So you can see it's a sustained heat wave. If we saw these sort of charts at this day, we saw that. If we had seen these charts this month, we'd be hearing headlines about it. It would be all over the news. We'd probably see amber and even red extreme heat warnings simply because of not only the peak temperatures from this, but it's the relentlessness of this heat. It really did last so many days, a good week of 30 plus degrees. And you can see the streamlines here. If you look at these arrows, you see the winds are straight up from the south. Yes, a slack southerly, but a southerly nonetheless for a full week before eventually getting shoved away by westerly winds. Now, another great thing about the Met Office is they do have these documents that we're able to access, showing you some of the data that's not freely available, or not available on sort of chart viewers, and they've got some screen grabs here from the 2003 event. As I said, it was hot from early on, the 6th of August, 4 days before we eclipsed that temperature record. You can already see widely across the whole of the UK we're in the mid to high 20s, and as I said, in that bullseye area across the East Midlands down towards the London area, it's about 32 to 34 degrees. And again, very similar to what we saw when we saw broke the 40-degree barrier in 2022 last summer. It was in this area here we saw the hottest temperatures. So the 6th, it's hot. It's getting towards very insanely hot temperatures. The 9th, so the day before, that 32 to 34 degree area has widened as the heat wave has built. But that peak temperature hasn't increased. It's stayed around the mid-30s or to low 30s. Become more widespread, 30 degrees even getting up towards the borders of Scotland there, into Scotland and Wales, and even down into the parts of the southwest of England. So it's very hot widely, but that peak temperature isn't insane yet. It's only the 10th that it gets insanely hot in around the London and the southeast area. But interestingly, 36, 37 degrees here, but areas further westwards, 25, 26. So in order for the hottest air to get drawn up, we need those isobars to tighten, and for the westerly winds, the low pressure, to try to push in, and that really shoved that southerly wind and gave it that momentum. So interestingly, the hottest day recorded from this heat wave officially was the 10th of August, but widely the hottest days were the days prior to that for most regions, with the temperature peaking around the 38.5 degree mark. Now, after you run back and go to the bottom of this page, you can actually see that we did eclipse the temperature record by over 1.4 degrees, with 37.1 degrees in Cheltenham in August 1990, so 33 years ago. So it was 13 years to break that temperature record, and we haven't broken it since in August. And yeah, really interesting seeing that. And as I said, it's that consecutive spells. Of course, 1976 is spoken about here a lot. But really, you can see here that, for example, Heathrow had 16 consecutive days during the 1976 heatwave, and in the August period, we saw 3 consecutive days, 4th to the 6th, and then 8th to the 12th. Enfield, for example, 3rd to the 20th, 10 consecutive days of over 30 degrees. So even when that cooler air started to move in, we still had enough lingering heat to sustain proper hot weather. So it really is interesting seeing this, and again, just highlights that I know a lot of the narrative at the moment is climate is warming, we're going to see loads of heat waves, but it's very interesting seeing that even before a lot of the global warming talk and a lot of the climate change talk, we were seeing these extreme heat waves. They're just statistically becoming more likely now. And again, we very interesting to see when we see a repeat of August 2003, as it really is a historic event, not only setting our temperature record, but seeing these consecutive, relentless days of insane heat here, with that 20-degree isotherm pushing into the southeast and really dominating for a good week to 10 days. I said that Enfield, 10 consecutive days of 30 plus degrees. And if I'm being honest, if that happened now, we would not hear the end of it. So yeah, fortunately, we've not seen anything like this since. I do think we will probably see this eclipsed in the near future, just from how temperature trends are going. The last few years, the main heat waves have come in July, and we have had some heat waves in August, but not getting much above the low 30s. And of course in June as well. So I do think we are due a big August heat wave, which would threaten this. But we have to remember that the time frame for an August heat wave is a lot smaller than a July heat wave. Remember, July is the hottest month, not only because the hottest air mass is to our south, but because the sun's strength is the warmest. It's the strongest, sorry, with the highest UV levels, the highest amount of energy going towards the surface. However, into August, during around the middle of August, that sun strength is starting to decrease. Like, for example, now we're right at the end of August, and although it's still warm out there, the sun is still strong, you can still get sunburnt, the sun strength is nowhere near what it is in June and July. For example, if the 15-degree isotherm came in right now, we'd be seeing temperatures in the mid-20s, maybe towards the high 20s. Back in July, you could even be seeing the low 30s. And I know that only is a few degrees, but when we're looking at temperature records and we're looking at proper heat waves, it does make all the difference. So this heat wave here that happened in 2003 pretty much came at the optimum time, the first few days of August, all the way to around the 12th or 13th. So I do think we will see something like this once again, but of course the stars will have to align. It'll be very interesting to see how long this temperature record does last, because we do have a look at the summer temperature records, August 2003 and June 1957 and 1976. So yeah, summer has been very hot recently. The last few years, this year hasn't been too great, but the last few years have been very hot. Going back all the way back to sort of 2018, when we saw that historically persistently hot summer, and we did see huge July temperatures then. You'll see here, June and August haven't been particularly remarkable. We haven't broken those temperature records. August for 20 years, and June going back 60 plus years. Have a look at that one in 1957, and almost 50 years for the one in 1976. So we saw 35.6 degrees. So it'll be very interesting to continue to follow these temperature records. But yeah, that event back in August 2003, it is ridiculous that it was 20 years ago now. Very insane heat wave. And yeah, must have been absolutely horrible at the time. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you have enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.